Welcome back to the Spring Promotion Tournament live from Los Angeles. Before we get to the battle between Team Coast and the Walking Dead, I want to talk to you guys about that last game. First off, we had an Annie this time for Gambit, so Edward playing it, and versus Leona and the other team. And I wanted to talk to you about that double lift because you mentioned how it was harder to predict where Leona would fall. That would be better for her as the game went on, but it didn't seem that way.
Well, I mean, you saw earlier in the game, Leona got a lot more picks off than Annie did. I think it's just so much harder to predict where Leona is and then respect the fact that she can just ulti you wherever. And she got a lot of picks off. Honestly, she killed Alex twice, I think twice, and then just kept picking people off throughout the game. But Annie, like I said, she's probably more consistent overall, and especially in lane. You saw Zuna fall really behind in lane, like 30 to 40 CS down, just because Annie provides so much more lane pressure than Leona. Just inherently, she has more range and kill potential. And that lane just kind of snowballed, and you just saw Annie become a monster late game, and Edward just played better than Bloodwater, honestly, so it's not really an accurate representation of the supports.
Oh. Well, how the game progressed, if we compare it to Game 1, in the first game we saw that it was an early lead for XDG that they then lost in team fights. In Game 2, it was Gambit that had the early lead, but then kind of dropped the ball. They seemed to be getting caught everywhere, or was that a strategy from XDG?
I think it was really XDG setting that up. The key factor, I think, here was actually Xmithy's Lee Sin. So he went Magic Razor, and he went Sightstone. He went to Ruby Sightstone, maybe it's a little bit overkill. But basically, the casters kept talking about all the vision control here for XDG, all the pick-off potential, and you've got Syndra, repeatable range stun, Leona, low cooldown ultimate, repeatable ranged initiation with the Zenith Blade and whatnot, and then of course Lee Sin himself going up there and starting fights, and you saw this mid-game sort of period where over and over and over again XDG is just making kills happen, and they got 4 or 5 in a row just picking people up across the map, and that's what Sightstone Razor Lee Sin does. Now, the problem is that kind of pushed forward, and the team fighting happened, and that got a lot worse.
So since the most recent changes to vision, it's a lot harder to take away the enemy's vision. So when they start snowballing, and they're putting down their trinket wards, and you don't have that many reds, maybe the Gambit almost got 0. I think they had none throughout the whole game. They had no red trinkets, so no way to really remove vision. And you have this Lee Sin who's popping wards everywhere to ward jump and just provide vision for his team. You can kind of keep snowballing off of getting 1 kill, just put wards out on the map and wait for them to show up in a bad spot, kill them again, and then Gambit was finally, after they got killed 10 times, they're like, okay, we're not going to overextend anymore, we're not going to play stupid, let's just group up and team fight and win. So they did.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an example of one of those team fights that Gambit played a lot better than XDG.
Yeah, so we have a replay of kind of these teams' team fight priorities. We can get that on your screen. And the weird thing is, so XDG tried really hard a few times in a row to dive Edward, and their team's not that good at diving, actually. If you look at their lineup on the right-hand side, Shyvana's okay, Lee Sin's okay, Syndra never reached, and Sivir never brought anyone in there, really. Where on the other side, Gambit's got Riven and Warwick, and that's really painful. So let's roll the clip out, and now watch the initiation for XDG, because they go really hard for Edward. And they try, and they deal some damage, but pause right here, because look, he flashed and gets kicked out by Lee Sin. Even without the kick, though, he's still at half HP, because no one could follow up. But look what Darian's done. He's just started his Warwick ultimate onto ManCloud's Syndra. Now, one other thing I want to point out is Zuna put on a spell shield on his Sivir. He saw the Warwick coming, spell shielded what would have been a possible initiation, and so the focus is actually on the unprotected Syndra, who has no peel, the entire rest of XDG is overextended, and Riven's about there to follow up to kill him off.
Yeah, and the biggest thing here is that Leona had blown all of her abilities to try to insta-gib the Annie. In the first game, Gambit insta-gibbed Bloodwater's Annie over and over again before she could get any spells off. But this game, you saw Edward play really smart. He doesn't even have a gold pretend. He just went all items to help him survive and help him fight. So he didn't die, and because of that, they blew everything, and they don't have any peel for Warwick's ulti. ManCloud's going to get full ulti here and just die.
Yeah, so let's roll the rest of the clip out right here. You're going to see ManCloud get destroyed a little bit. You see Leona try to initiate back in, but at this point, it's bad target prioritization, and you've got just 2 frontline fighters, Diamond's Elise as well as Darian's Warwick. They just get to put down very good persistent damage when they're not peeled off, when the core burst mage has been removed, and when you've got an AD carry like Sivir, who's I think less of a duelist and more of team utility. It's a bit harder to remove those guys, and Gambit just had better team fighting.
And we saw also in that fight afterwards, Alex cleaned up on Riven, but it isn't that ManCloud played a bad game again.
No, ManCloud's been really good, and that's why when you asked at the beginning, what's a key matchup you think is going to go really badly in one way? And I was like, well, probably the jungle because I think Diamond's a better innovator. Where this mid lane matchup went equal, or was won by ManCloud in both these games. Not many people get to say, I beat Alex Ich in lane, so I gotta give props there, he deserves it.
Yeah, he played really solid throughout the whole game. My one kind of concern is when you're that far ahead, I think it's kind of unnecessary to go Deathfire Grasp. I think this game he especially should have gotten like an Hourglass. I mean, he's up against Warwick and Riven. You have to kind of expect that you're going to get Zerg down. I thought his item builds were kind of questionable, but overall, yeah, he played really well. I mean, he beat Alex Ich. He's one of the best mid laners in EU.
All right, so Doublelift, this XDG is, of course, a team you're going to be up against. What is your opinion on their performance overall?
Just how I expected. I definitely expected Gambit to win, like I said. Their bot lane just went the way that I thought. I mean, they were just getting disrespected. Like, support Amumu, even after in the interview, they're like, it's not that good. We're just like, whatever. Why did you pick it if it's not that good? Well, it's like, it's almost disrespectful, in my opinion. And then top lane, Darien just has, 3 years of experience, where Psycho Sid has, 1. Mid lane actually just surprised me. I definitely thought that Alex Ich was going to get the better of ManCloud, but it ended up being the opposite.
Right, well, thank you very much. And with their win, of course, Gambit has secured 2 more points for the EU, giving them a 4-2 lead over the NA, heading into tomorrow's final fight in the Battle of the Atlantic, Cloud9 versus Fnatic. So there's still a chance for you guys from North America to win, as Sunday's games carries a hefty prize of 3 points. But that's tomorrow, and we still have a lot more league for you today. So now let's send it over to Pastry Time and Jad for the play-by-play of our next Spring Promotion Tournament Series.
Thanks, Shocks, and I'm Julian Pastry Time Carr alongside Joshua Jat Leesman, and we'll be bringing you the calls in this best-of-5 Spring Promotion Tournament Series between Team Coast and the Walking Zed.
Yeah, and let's talk about Coast a little bit, because my voice is going away. Coast struggled during the LCS Summer Split. They went 9-19, but then in the offseason, they've been in that NACL Challenger League. They actually went 26-2 and took first place in those playoffs.
And Coast credits a lot of their newfound success to the most recent addition to their team, their new AD carry, WizFusion.
We recently picked up WizFusion. He's a really upbeat kind of guy, keeps our morale up high in scrims even when we're losing, and I don't know, it gives the team a nice environment.
I fit in pretty nicely. I don't think I was really like the odd one out or anything. You know, I played a lot of solo queue. It was kind of one of those things where I just figured I would eventually get noticed, and then Danny, or Shifter, he messaged me, just asked me like, are you willing to try out for Team Coast? And I immediately kind of knew like, that's probably what I want to do, you know?
Wiz overall is just a really positive guy. He brings a great atmosphere to the team, and mechanically, I'd say he's top 3 in NA.
He gets up early, he practices, he's ready for scrims, you know, he gets to bed at a decent time.
Having the right mentality is going to be a huge part of becoming the best, and I think that's what will help me shape this team into a better one.
We just needed to bond together as a team. We didn't really feel like we were a 5-man unit, and I feel like over the course of fall and winter we kind of became a 5-man unit, and that's why we'd been crushing so hard, and now I feel like we're unstoppable.
Yeah, the main goal would be like go to Worlds and do all those international tournaments.
I think we're ready to just get back into it and be the best.
And Coast looking good there, and Drat, they've really started their season off well.
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of an extended conversation with Nintendo actually about why they decided to pick WizFusion, because they've tried out a lot of other AD carries, and a lot of it did just come down to his mentality, so that was pretty good. Yeah, and also we have more stuff for Team Coast. After that incredible playoff run, they finished 2nd in the spring split, but then they faltered in the summer. And with the pickup of WizFusion, some of that was because Don't Match Me, their old AD carry, had the worst numbers of any AD carry in the LCS. He only had 77 kills over the 28-game season. And with that pickup, they're looking to make a big move forward.
Yeah, WizFusion and Coast will look to continue their domination of the Challenger teams as they take on Yazuki and the Walking Dead.
Yeah, so the Walking Zed actually went 4-1 in the group stage. They beat all the other top Challenger teams, Quantic, Complexity, and Determined. Their top lane, Yazuki, actually used to be on the old Cloud9 way before they would qualify. And Bishu actually did mention in that interview yesterday that Coast was going to regret picking them. We'll see if he can live up to that.
We'll see. And while both teams are coming in with a lot of confidence, Coast's Zion Spartan thinks the new addition of the live audience may be the variable that trips up the Walking Zed.
Maybe this may sound a little cocky, but we thought we were the best amateur team here.
We just feel like we're stronger. We definitely have the experience. We are ready. We've been playing, you know, as good as we've ever been lately. I don't see how we can't just win this series and just get back into the LCS.
They've been playing the game for so long, they've been in the LCS for so long, and their performance has been kind of depleting. I don't know, I feel like they're just an okay team because they're in relegations and they're not really, at the top with like the rest of the teams.
I definitely think competing in a studio, competing in a live audience gives you an advantage over people who haven't done it, because the first time you're nervous. I remember 2 years ago when I had my first experience, I was very nervous. I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of shocked at all the people, and some people might not be ready for that.
So a lot of confidence going between the two teams now, and with that, we're going to check out the starting lineups. On the blue side, it's Team Coast. In the top, Zion Spartan. In the jungle, Nintendo X. Their mid, Shifter. Their AD carry, Wiz Fusion. And in support, it's Daydreamin'.
Yeah, and of course on the red side, it is the challenger team, the Walking Zed. Top lane is Yuzuki. Their jungler, Kez. A lot of people might know him by Core Kez. Their mid lane is Bishu. AD carry, of course, Bobby Hand Kill. And Nidus Remain on support.
And Jad, as we kind of get to start off this game here, I think it's going to be another situation where it's a new challenger team coming up against another experienced LCS team. But the scariest thing for me isn't just that Coast have already played in the LCS, but that they look so strong in the challenger scene as well.
Absolutely. The one thing that could spell disaster for Coast is this Walking Zed team. A couple of the players were in that NACL, but only for the first few weeks. After that, the Walking Zed dropped completely out of that league and were just kind of playing at home. They used to be a team known as GGLA, at least 4 of the 5 of them, and they've since kind of moved on and done this weird practice off-air sort of thing and then come in incredibly strong. Coast beat everyone in that Challenger League, but Walking Zed wasn't there.
Yeah, that's true, and they really do feel like the silent achievers almost in the challenger scene. Everyone kind of had determined on their map when they were looking at challenger teams. That was the team that nobody wanted to play against, and all of a sudden the Walking Zed, who Bishu thinks at least, they might be the better team.
I mean, Bishu might have something to say about that. They haven't really been proved otherwise because no one has necessarily been playing against them, right?
And I think that the thing that might be tricky here is that Coast have the experience, really. They've been together for a while. They've been talking about just how good their synergy feels now. That they're all together as a team, and that can make the difference. But Chat, moving through, I think we've got to talk about Shifter to start things off, because he's got so many strong champions he can play.
Exactly. Coming into this, the whole team really, as for me as Team Coast, is the best team that's trying to requalify, and I'd say Shifter is the best player on the team as well. His mid lane, he's got 2 accounts in Challenger. I watch his stream occasionally. It's almost like he doesn't even have to try sometimes to dominate with people. He probably roams better than any other mid laner, at least in the Challenger or the promotion tournament right here. And I'm going to look for some actually pretty big plays as far as Nintendo holding mid and Shifter roaming.
All right, so we are going to get into Champ Select now for Game 1 of this best of 5. Coast on the left to start things off. The Walking Zed on the right. Nasus the first bound here for Coast, and Riven is interestingly the answer there.
Yeah, so looking at the matchup really, since those are 2 top lane bans between Zion Spartan and Yuzuki, one of the few tanks that Zion Spartan actually played was Nasus, but Yuzuki plays a lot more of it. If we were to kind of remove ourselves from the current patch, which is really tank heavy in the top lane, both Zion Spartan and Yuzuki would like to play those high damaging carries, but they're just not able to play them in this one.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about different top lane players having to adapt to so many tanky champions being played with Shyvana, with Dr. Mundo. They seem reasonably comfortable, but I think the other thing we mentioned, Shifter, for Coast, it feels like Nintendo is really the next piece of that puzzle because he's always around. And this is yet a really good point to make about how Shifter roams. It's not just him, Nintendo's there as well.
Yeah, we have a really quick restart in Champ Select here, guys. It'll be right back into it as soon as possible. There was an accidental ban, apparently. Not sure how accidental that's allowed to be. We'll get a ref ruling on that one later. But I agree with your point there about Nintendo X in the jungle. He has always been an incredibly supportive jungler. It's just coincidental the way they're doing this mid lane push and roam thing. Because Nintendo X's big problem was he'd always fall behind and farm. What happens now is he actually just gets free farm through supporting Shifter's ability to roam. And it really works better for their team overall because they have more threats by the end of the game and in the teamfight phase.
Yeah, so we have to kind of look for a lot of pressure here. When Shifter moves out of the lane, Nintendo often rotates in, and then we'll see him just effectively lane tax, but that's all planned there. We've seen a lot of strong mid-game play, especially from Coast as well, but you are going to get back here. Looks like Nidalee was the ban they really wanted.
The Nasus ban is not to be the case, which is going to be very interesting to see if Coast decides to pick that up later. But since there was 1 accidental ban, that's 6 bans that are very deliberate because, man, those came out fast.
Yeah, so Nidalee, Gragas, and Dr. Mundo, the bans there for Coast. And over on the other side, we've got Leona, Catherine, and that's Sivir. Yeah, Sivir. So it looked like Jax for a second there, but it is Sivir. A lot of very straightforward bans here, Jack.
Yeah, so the big 280 carries that would still be up would be Lucian and Jinx. Those guys aren't necessarily priorities. Since Shyvana, the big top laner, was taken right off the bat, You can see the Elise locked in early. The other priority support that isn't Thresh would usually be Annie. I'm a little surprised they decided to go with the Thresh there.
Yeah, I mean, Nidus has a lot of Thresh experience. He's someone that's really played that champion a lot. So it might be something he's comfortable with. And speaking of comfortable, I'd be shocked to see, already locked in the Olaf.
Absolutely. Nintendo X's two junglers actually are Elise and Olaf currently. Olaf is the one that he had played before anybody else. Season 1, Season 2. If you were playing competitive League back then, you knew the jungler was Nintendo X on Olaf. These picks are coming in a little too fast, though.
Yeah, Jinx is in there as well. And Nasus, as you mentioned, also coming through there for the Walking Zed. So we'll have to see how else this develops, as Lucian has already been picked up as well.
Yeah, that's the combo just to go up against Jinx. And this mid lane pick is very quickly done.
I mean,
I was going to go off on a tangent and say, like, hey, maybe they're going to pick LeBlanc because Olaf has wave clear in the mid lane. But with Ziggs available, we saw Pobelter's Ziggs yesterday in the last promotion game.
It's pretty good.
It was rather strong. I think that's a smart pick by Shifter.
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of mid players are going to start to default to now. It's just like, well, when in doubt, pick Ziggs, because he just seems so good, especially on this patch. I like this answer from Bishu, kind of. I like it for teamfight, but kind of depends what he goes with here. We'll see.
Bijou definitely trends towards more defensive mid lane champions, so he plays a lot of Nidalee, he plays a lot of Orianna as well. Either one of those can kind of work in this situation. It fits within his champion pool, but I think he's going to be at the mercy of Shifter for most of this game.
Yeah, especially with Gragas banned out there as well by Coast. He's really gone to Gragas constantly in his Challenger games, and it is Orianna that he gets in. So it's great for the team, but it's a really tough lane for Ori to deal with.
Yeah, both of these teams, now that we see them all locked in, are fairly flexible teams as far as having a good balance of magic and physical damage and crowd control and all those things. But something that definitely emerges is Coast has a whole bunch more AoE damage. Every single person on that team can really pack a large AoE punch in a team fight, and it's just going to be on Walking Zed to spread out a little bit, which can be difficult when they have Nasus and Elise trying to die.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about experience here yesterday, especially with Evil Geniuses winning yesterday, and I think one of the things here is that Coast seem to have the stronger lanes in this particular matchup based on the champions that have been picked, and a lot of the challenger teams kind of rely on winning their lane in order to get ahead and snowball the game from here. But the Walking Zed, they're putting a lot on here and trying to win potentially and actually have team fights.
And of the teams that are challengers right now, the Walking Zed, I'd say have the strongest team play, and they're not as reliant on the laning phase. So that's one thing they might have coming at them. I really got to see how Cortez does with the jungle Elise and if he can help out those lanes early.
All right, so as the teams load into the game, let's take a look at who you think is going to win their way into the LCS. According to LOLesports.com, only 57% of you think Team Coast will sail off with the win.
Yeah, that's actually a fairly low percentage, knowing how unknown the Walking Zed is, but it's going to be interesting to watch. And also remember, we got this again tomorrow on Sunday. Cloud9 takes on Fnatic to conclude the Battle of the Atlantic, and then Curse face off against Cognitive Gaming in the final promotion tournament series.
So we are getting into this game, Jet. What are the things you really like about these team comps that have been picked out here? Who will you pick straight 5v5?
Yeah, straight 5v5, it's absolutely Coast team composition. And I think that plays in a little bit to their play style. In all of the NACO games and even the NACO playoffs, Coast did a lot of very standard things in lane and just kind of played it out evenly. Then when the game really hit is when you started to see them fly ahead.
All right, so we are going to get into this first game here between these two teams. It is Coast versus the Walking Zed with LCS on the line here. A best of 5 as we kick things off with game 1 here. Level 1 action could see some things come out. 9 yellow trinkets all told, Jat, and 1 red one on the Coast side.
Yeah, we often see 10. And if there is the 1 red trinket, it often means that team is looking for a brute force invade right off the bat. What a way to start the game. Let's stop it right away.
Very dramatic, level 1.
Yeah, this should be fixed fairly quickly, I believe. Usually pauses this early aren't major issues, otherwise it would have been caught far earlier. I want to talk about the red trinket just a little bit more, though, because when teams are using it, it's after they've invaded and they're sitting in a brush, they need to check that that's not warded, because it's almost just an insurance policy to avoid absolute disaster.
And I think that's really fitting that the champion that actually has the red trinket is Annie, because she's a champion that teams love to invade with and really try and get the AoE stun going off early, because you can either really threaten your opponent and get some good wards down. If you have some, although it's kind of yellow trinkets, it's a bit awkward, or catch somebody and really do well there.
Yeah, we've actually seen First Blood in the Evil Geniuses game because of an early level 1 flash by the Annie when it was Crepo playing yesterday.
He was super aggressive. One cleaver hit, and he flashed straight into the tri-bush and managed to get first blood on poor Robert X. Lee. From
He got a whole highlight clip made out of him, actually.
Well, he played really well yesterday.
He did. That's what happens when you 3-0, I suppose.
If you guys didn't catch those games, make sure you do. But we do, of course, have Coast versus TWZ here. And this is one of the harder ones to call, Jad. I mean, yesterday was tricky just because we didn't know much about the new EG. This one, a little tricky because, again, the Walkings there, we haven't seen that much of them, especially against a team like Coast. But it seems like the early favorites are probably the LCS team or the ex-LCS team.
Exactly. And to give a little bit more context on the Walking Zed as a team, the group stage they had to play in to get here had 6 of the potential 3 challenger teams to make it, and making top 3 was what was needed. They only lost to Cognitive Gaming, who's going to be playing tomorrow, who a lot of people weren't even seeing as a really powerful team coming into this. They beat up on a lot of the teams that would have been favorites. They beat Complexity, they beat Quantic, who wasn't going to make it in here. They even beat Determined Gaming, who unfortunately lost yesterday. But that was, after those results, it was a little surprising that Coast actually selected the Walking Zed because many people considered them stronger than Determined Gaming.
And I think Bishu sort of said it in the video where it's like, I think these teams are underestimating us. I'm surprised they picked us because we are such a strong team. And I mean, if they are as strong as they want to be, as they think they are, then they're going to have to show it right here. And they've got a best of 5 to do so, but Coast really want to defend their title here and make it back into the LCS.
And I think Bishu has more to prove than anyone, only because he's up against such a monster and Shifter on the other side. I'm willing to talk up Shifter a whole bunch because I think he's an amazing mid laner. And when you look at this matchup on paper, you see someone like Bishu, who is very good at playing the far back poke champions, like an Nidalee or an Orianna, like he's picked in this game. But Shifter not only has strong laning mechanics, he's the one who likes to shove up a whole bunch and then begin to roam afterwards. And that's really where it's a bad matchup for Bishu and the Walking Zed, because if Shifter's able to push Bishu around since he's playing so passively, he's going to be able to go back afterwards and just make a whole bunch of plays.
Yep, so we'll have to see here. I mean, when you think even back to GGLA, Bishu is kind of the star of their team, and he's arguably here as well on the Walking Zed. I mean, they've certainly picked up a couple of players here that have really impressed me as I've watched through the challenger scene, but it's almost like if we were to have a featured matchup here, it would be the mid laners.
Yeah, I absolutely think it would be the mid laners. Ziggs versus Orianna. Some pretty AoE heavy guys right off the bat, and hopefully we're going to be able to get back in here rather quickly. It's taking the wind out of Coast sails right now.
It has indeed. I mean, we can talk a little bit about the mid matchup while we're here as well. Not the best one for Orianna, unfortunately. She doesn't do all that well when she gets shoved in. Ziggs is actually quite good at bursting through her shield, and a lot of the defensive play she wants to make, she can't do as well as she might like in some other matchups. And it's kind of this, it's similar to how Gragas is good against Orianna. We're just bursting through all the defensive capabilities.
Yeah, we can see if Shifter's able to dump all of his Ziggs spells very early on into Bishu, but the jungle matchup itself, I'd have to say, would be a little bit more favorable for the Elise, which is on the Orianna side. And that'll just depend on whether Nintendo and Kez decide to gank the mid lane, most and foremost.
I think in general, we're not expecting Nintendo to gank at all, really. I mean, he's more of a farming style jungler, likes to get in the lanes, pressure them and push them, but not necessarily go for a full-on gank. So I'm expecting him to be quite active in terms of making sure his lanes are okay, but he certainly Elise is going to be doing all sorts of pressure. It's almost a very polarizing style between the two junglers. But we are back into the game now, and level 1 can continue.
Well, they're spotted. So I'm not sure if this invade's going to continue. And they got spotted. We must pause again. They saw us, guys. Pause the game.
Want to make sure everything goes just smoothly as possible.
We were so
level
close.
We were.
To making it back in. But really, I'll talk a little bit about Nintendo Dex because I've known him for quite a while. He has actually been around in the competitive or almost challenger level league scene. He's very recently made it to the pro scene for as long as anyone. This guy's been playing since the game launched. If you talk to, I'm trying to think like a Saint Vicious or Hotshot, those guys that are around back then, they were around when Nintendo Dex was trying to make his way back up. Playing Olaf.
I was going to say he was definitely playing Olaf at that time.
As he's been able to make it back up. And another thing I can actually touch on here about Coast's early game is they have most likely been hiding some of their stuff in NACL playoffs because they've known that they're having these all-important matches coming up near the end of December, the whole time they're playing in the NACL playoffs, which I think is why in so many of their NACL games, they would slow play the first 10 minutes of the game. It seemed like Coast was a very generic, by-the-book team, and they never really did anything creative. So in this situation, now that they haven't shown anything for so long, any type of creative tactic they've come up with, they can try to bring out here.
Yeah, I mean, we watched a couple of their games, and the thing we really got out of them was that they felt like a mid-game team fight team. They would maybe fall behind early, not too far behind, but they would struggle a little bit in their landing phase to kind of get things going. I mean, Nintendo's presence maybe not as felt in the lanes like you would have wanted it to be. And then all of a sudden, a skirmish would happen, a team fight would happen, a fight for a dragon would happen, and Coast are just incredibly far ahead all of a sudden, and they snowball from there.
And we're kind of like, what happened in some of those games? You were never really sure how it all went down. And a lot of it was because either Nintendo would get the ganks or Shifter roamed so well. And I think it was those two that really spearheaded the efforts for their team.
Yeah, and I think Shifter has to be the guy we've got to look out for. And Bishu, again, on the other side as well. If the Walking Zed want to take this matchup, which should be tricky given Coast's pedigree here in the challenger scene, then they've got a lot to do here. I mean, we've talked a lot about the mid laners already. Moving down to the bottom lane, I have to say Bobby Hank Hill looks so solid when I've seen him play.
Yeah, Bobby Hank Hill's a really interesting one in here because he is another person. He used to actually be a manager of the teams way early on in Season 1 of, I believe it was the team Epic Gamer. That was the team with Dan Din. Dyrus and Doublelift got to their start with that. And he was actually like the manager/coach of that team. So he's been on the outskirts of the competitive game for so long, but he's really stuck with it, continued to play. And for a while, he wasn't even one of those top-tier 80 carries, but now he's 99 LP, Diamond 1. If he makes it in the LCS, no one's going to be able to tell him he's not.
All right, and as we take care of the technical difficulties on the stage, let's send it over to Shocks and the guys at the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, guys. Just a little bit of technical difficulties, but that gives us a chance to talk about the team comps that both teams are running. What's kind of your idea of how it will scale into the mid-game and the actual team fights coming out?
Sure. So to talk about the sort of 5v5s here, the team comps that are available is I really like what Coast has going here. They've got a lot of ways to jump in and make plays. You've got the Annie support. Everyone knows about Annie support. Flash Tibber is just the general engage, really, really strong. You've got Ziggs for follow-up. You've got Olaf and Shyvana able to run down there and help with the follow-up as well. And there's just so much burst that you're going to give Jinx a reset. And Wiz Fujin's going to get in there and start wreaking havoc. And there's so much disruption and front-loaded damage that's almost your peel, I think. That you're too busy dealing with an Olaf and a Shyvana and a Tibbers to deal with Jinx herself.
Yeah, and I'm just going to be completely honest here. Coast has like 4 OP champions. I mean, they have Shiv top, Ziggs mid, and Jinx Annie. Like, if you give a team Jinx Annie, then you had to have gotten something like really, really OP in exchange for that, because just how picks and bans work, you know, their blue side, they got the first pick, but on purple side, you get the next 2. So you can potentially get 2 OPs. And really, when I look at Walking Zed's team comp, I don't really see anything special. I think Nidus Remain wanted to take away Daydream's signature hooking champion, Thresh. But Nidus has never been a good Thresh player, like a top-tier Thresh player, I should say. He's never really been comfortable on the champion. He's more like a Zyra, Sona, Karma player. Yep. And it's just really strange for me to see him play a Thresh, because in scrims, I hardly ever see him play that champ.
Yeah, and I actually want to kind of talk about those champ-select games a little bit, because they're always really interesting to me. I love the mind games around picking and stealing and putting comp together all at the same time. And I think if you kind of look back at Gambit's win over XDG, their late, like game 1, their late Kayle pick was so perfect because it was a mid lane matchup that was going to be pretty favorable. It's an alright matchup against Kha'Zix. But then also it shut down the team comp. So we have 3 tanks and the squishies can be Kayle ulted. And so here you've got a very similar thing happening where, again, yeah, the Thresh Steel tried to go in there. You could argue that it wasn't really the right choice, but then what I really liked was those Ziggs is kind of the sought-after mid laner that's so important to these teams. Basically, Coast waited to pick it and was kind of saying, Are you gonna pick it? Are you gonna pick it? Because they were kind of waiting to see if they can counterpick with like a LeBlanc or something. Because that's the counterpick I typically see here from Shifter when that happens. But instead, he's got the standard Ziggs coming through here. And honestly, the amount of pressure you get to create from that champion, getting it as your 3rd pick is pretty crazy. And
I have to give it to Walking Zed. The one thing they did do really well is they picked Nasus into Jinx, which most teams don't really run Nasus. You saw Benny run it, but I haven't seen Nasus in a really long time, and it is a counter to Jinx, especially because she ran Barrier this game, which I find really strange. If it gets to like kind of mid-late game and Nasus gets a little bit tanky and he just withers Jinx, she actually becomes completely useless.
Let's focus maybe a little bit on the mid lane. As you touched on Ziggs, and we saw Pobalt were doing so well with Ziggs yesterday, of course, and just that matchup in general. In the interview yesterday, Bishu was trash-talking a little bit and said, I will do very well, but realistically, how well can he do versus Shifter?
I think this is actually a really easy lane for Shifter here. From everything I saw from him playing in NACL playoffs or in the group stage there for the qualifier for this tournament, he would win his lane. Shifter would win his lane consistently as Ziggs. And the signature move that I see that really I think is so strong for these guys is he'll bully his opponent out of lane, and then he'll start putting pressure on the turret, and he'll pull Nintendude in, like half health Olaf with W, and they'll wreck the turret at like level 7. Coast's mid lane turret is oftentimes the first turret they kill, which is really rare for a team. And as we heard the commentators talk about in the pregame, one of Nintendude's big weaknesses was not getting farm in the jungle. He just gets pulled in the mid lane, shares gold on the turret, and there they go.
Yeah, we're going to see how that plays out. It looks like we've got the problem solved, so over on stage. So let's send it back over to Pastry time. And Jack for the play-by-play.
Thanks, Shox, and we are going to be able to start this game up once again here in Jat. Going to be a great one to kick things off here.
Yeah.
Coast, again, kind of the favorites here in this one, but I can't wait to see what TWZ have brought.
Yeah, and I can't wait to get into this game because all the fans out there have been very patient waiting for this one, and it's going to be good because this is the, obviously there's a lot of hype between the promotion game yesterday because Evil Geniuses was coming over, all the star power here, but from a competitive aspect, since I think Coast was the strongest returning LCS team and maybe the Walking Zed, such a surprising selection by Coast to want to play them as an incredibly strong challenger team. And we're back in. This is it.
Yep. All right, we're going to do it one more time here for the level 1 and hopefully no other times here. Moving through now, almost a minute up on the clock here as Coast are taking on TWZ in their opening game of this best of 5 for the NALCS Spring Promotion. Everybody just going to hang out here and see what we can see. And we kind of expected this aggression here from Coast, just to move through the jungle.
They already got one ward on the other side. You can actually see Daydreaming didn't start with an Ancient Coin. He's all wards right now because they want to get very early jungle control. I do worry a bit for Coast since they're not used to making early game plays because they've been hiding all of their strategies in the NACL. They might get a little overzealous, even though these are expected strategies for them. They're not something they've actually played live yet, so it's going to be a little risky them running and taking risks.
And it's one of those things when we think about the challenger scene, it almost feels like the teams have swapped roles a little bit here. TWZ are looking like, okay, we want to go for the strong mid-game team fight and be that experienced team fight team. And Coast are like, kind of win some lane here, get aggressive early on.
Yeah, Coast, so much AoE damage. I did like the point that Doublelift brought up about Wiz Fusion and not bringing Cleanse against Yuzuki's Nasus. There will have to be a little bit of an emphasis on Zion Spartan to take down Yuzuki at some point. Even with all these wards, it just seems like they're going to be trading buffs. I don't know what exactly Coast will be able to grab out of this.
No, so Zion, interestingly, grabs the red there. Don't know if that was a misclick.
Well, the Smite was actually used by Nintendo X, and they were both getting it, but they may be running in for a bit of a fight here. They're on top of a ward.
They are indeed. Bobby Hankill's going to have to get well and truly out of the way, and they're going to start the level 1 fighting. Daydreaming, looking forward for the AoE, and does find a bit. Nidus main forced to flash out in there as well, as Coast are going to continue chasing, but Nintendo, no blue buff, cannot continue undertowing.
No blue buff, no mana, and Smite still on cooldown. This could definitely set him back early on in the jungle. Come on, man. What are we doing here?
And so could the pause potentially. I mean, I don't know exactly what happened here while we're pausing, but I certainly hope that Nintendo didn't misplay that there, because that's a very strange thing to donate a buff over to your jungler. I mean, maybe they thought their blue would be there, but TWZ were ready.
Yeah, you can see a new PC being brought in there for Zion Spartan. They can actually swap these out rather fast now. I've seen them. We've swapped a couple PCs out over the weekend, and it's been quick. So really good props out to the QA team here, trying to get everything sorted quickly as possible. Longer delay than we'd like in this one, though, I'd have to say.
I think so, too. I mean, it's the opening game of best of 5. There's so much on the line for both these teams. I know you're excited, Jad. I'm certainly excited, too.
I'm ready to get into
these
this
games.
one.
And, you know, had a bit of interesting action early on, but we need more.
It's crazy because for 2 minutes a game,
a lot happened.
That was an interesting 2 minutes of game. I don't want to analyze it while it's not on screen and also while they're swapping out the PCs. Casey's listening to what I'm saying. You know, all the important strats. But really, it was because the buffs that they traded were so different from each other. The fact that didn't make any sense. Instead of swapping blues, they swapped a red and a blue. So when they came out of the invade, they were on a collision course for each other.
All right, so apologies, guys. It looks like we do have more technical difficulties, so we're going to throw it back to Shox and the guys at the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Pastry. Well, actually, it's always nice to talk to these guys about the games. Tell me about the level 1 action we saw right there.
Oops. So I don't think Zion meant to get the red buff. He was, I guess, just barely in range with his W. If he had a Sunfire cape, that definitely would have stolen it. But in this case, it was just a slightly early smite from Nintendo.
Yeah, and honestly, that was some pretty poor misplay, either miscommunication or whatever, because Annie flash stunned the Thresh. I felt like that was a free kill, especially because they have red buff. It would be different if it was swapped and they had the blue, but because they have red, all it takes is a flash red buff proc, and then you can just chase him down. I mean, he's so far from any turret, any kind of safety, and all he did was go flay, so really he's just completely dead, and they didn't kill him. Maybe some like tournament jitters or something, just not wanting to take any risks, waste summoners. Also with the new changes, it's kind of a toss-up. A lot of teams actually choose to hold onto their summoners to not get first blood because having flash is more valuable than first blood now to some teams. I still think it's worth it to flash for a kill, but you know, they reduce the amount of gold you get from first blood, so it's a toss-up.
Yeah, first blood right now, if I recall correctly, I could be wrong in this, is 290, so it's basically a regular kill's worth of, if you get it before 2 minutes, it's worth basically a regular kill's worth of gold, and most people tend to flash for kills in the first place. So I agree with you. I think it's oftentimes really worth it.
Yep.
Just going to mention that we're having a frames per rate issue and we're swapping out computers. It won't take too long, but when you're in this high-stress situation, what does it do to you that all of a sudden you're cut off and you're not allowed to talk about the game? How do you reset yourself?
It's incredibly hard. You're right now, what they're probably doing is they're sitting in their chairs thinking, you know, everyone's watching me, you know, my mom's watching me, my friends are watching me, and it's like really stressful, honestly, because everyone's judging your every move. Any mistake you make, you're going to get crap for it on Reddit or wherever. And so you're just trying to think about like not messing up. That's what's going through your head. And it's hard to think about what you're going to do next because of the pause. You know, you kind of have this plan set already in your head. You're not going to like revisit it and like rethink it. You're just kind of nervous, especially if you're a new team. I know, like, I personally think that Walking Zed you're going to see a lot of random mistakes from them because they're just new. They don't have lane experience. They don't play in front of thousands, millions of viewers. And this is one of their first times, and you're going to see like maybe some shot calling errors, maybe some mechanical errors, and it's going to throw them off. It's going to put them on tilt.
Do you feel that being nervous was also the factor in Champ Select? I know that when they were in group stage here, they played tons of different champions in the bottom lane. Is that a strategy in that they can play all of them, or is that also an experience that we don't really know how to build our comps yet?
I really think this was I think the entirety of Champ Select was on purpose from Walking Zed, because nothing that Coast did here is new. Nintendo's on Olaf. No one is surprised by this whatsoever. And I know like his Elise is really good as well, and that was well, it's one of Kez's main champions as well. Like, I could see that being a bit of a steal, but it's not like they're setting Nintendo far behind. They know Zig's going to come from Shifter. Like, they're aware of Zion Spartan's champion pool, and they're very aware of the fact that Wisfujin takes Jinx over anything else. And so all these champions are no surprise at all for TWZ. They know their own bands. They know what coasts are likely to pick up. And I think both of these teams, Champ Select went according to plan. Just their plan itself might not have been very good.
Do you think that Team Coast was trying to keep the secret going even longer and said, no, we're not going to give everything away game one, that they might come up with some special stuff later?
To me, I think if you have something special planned, put it in there game one, because then if it's really good, you start drawing bans and the rest of your games are even easier. I think it's really weird to have a secret strat and then just like not run it the entire time because you're too afraid. Like, game one is, I think, the best place for that.
Tell me a little bit, if you go into a best of 5 like this double lift, how does, or a best of 3 like you guys did yesterday, where first off you went for second off you went for Tristana, and though we know that you don't want to pick her that often anymore, she's not at your top tier because Lucian, Jinx, and Sivir are for you. How much can that throw you off after that first game loss that you just leave everything in Champ Select for game 2?
Yeah, it does affect. Game 1 is everything to game 2. Like, I'll just be honest. You don't think 100% correctly and just like logically if you've lost the first game. And if you win the first game, you're on a high. Like, you might think something differently than you normally would in like a calm state of mind. And like, I know for sure that in that specific best of 3, because we got cheesed early game in game 1, and like we got 3-man at level 1 with TP Mundo, I was like not thinking correctly on how I'm gonna approach the next game, and that like resulted in me losing lane because I wanted to play more passively than I normally do. And it's just, it all snowballs from just one thing, just like one small thing. Oh, like we got cheesed at level 1. I should, if I was a perfect player, I would just be like, no big deal, we got cheesed, probably won't happen again, I'll just play accordingly. But what really happens is it alters like the way you think about how you're going to play. Like, even subconsciously, you don't make that decision, but I don't know, if something goes wrong, you don't want to mess up again. That is the ultimate thing. You just don't want to take any more risks.
Talking about mind games are obviously so important here, and that difference in experience between these two teams will come to play in a grand way. And what I also wanted to ask you actually is that Wisfujin is coming in as AD carry. It was Don't Match Me before. Have you played against him a lot in any solo queue?
Yeah.
And what is his skill level?
Yeah, we scrimmed against Coast a pretty significant amount. I think Wisfujin is, as Jademian said, probably, potential to be top 3, top 4 AD and NA, which is a big thing. Like I think AD carries in NA are generally pretty good, and he's a huge step up from MashMe. Like no offense to MashMe, but his synergy with Daydream was not the best, and I felt like he didn't really mesh well with the team, especially in team fights. He would like go forward when his team was going back, and just his positioning errors. Just I saw a lot of problems. But WizFusion plays the OPs. That is the most important thing. He plays Jinx, he plays Lucian, and he knows how to play the game. He's a really good solo QAD, and he kind of transitioned that well into synergizing with Daydream. Daydream. Dude, I keep thinking about OGN.
He's not Korean. He's
I keep
not
thinking
Korean.
about OGN, dude.
He's also not a jungler.
Yeah, my bad.
I'm happy
I
that
get him confused.
I'm happy that you mentioned Daydreaming actually, because I've heard in the walkways that Daydream has really stepped up his play lately. Is that the impression you guys got as well?
Ooh. I don't know. He's okay. Like, whatever. His thresh has always been good. He's good at hooking champions. We'll have to see how good he plays on Annie. I think he's okay on other champions, just okay.
Just okay. Thank you, Ramus. All right, guys, we're going to go try it again and hope we've gotten all the gremlins out of the computer. Let's send it back to the desk to pastry time and Jat for the play-by-play. Fingers crossed.
Thanks again, Shocks. We're going to do it one more time here for Game 1 between Team Coast and the Walking Zed. Jat, soon we'll get a game.
How many fingers can I cross right now? I got all of my hand
these two.
crossed. Can you do your pinkies?
No, almost.
Really?
A little bit.
Wow.
Maybe with help.
Do you want some help?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah,
This is weird.
It is weird.
What are we doing?
I don't
All
know.
right, I think you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got there.
Hey, it worked. We're in the game.
That's good too.
All right. No, we're not. It's paused. Not even kidding.
That would have been
I'm not even kidding on that one.
that would have been next level trolling.
I'm so sorry.
Me too. But it's okay. Again, want to make sure these players have the ideal circumstances to play in. I mean, it is a tournament. There's so much on the line here as well with the LCS. So these things do happen, unfortunately, but we'll make sure to get it all sorted out. And then hopefully from there, we're going to have a great best-of-5 series with minimal, if any, problems.
Exactly. We got the games off yesterday. It is clearly possible to finish these. It's really going to be hard for these guys, especially as Doublelift was talking about the Walking Zed, because they've spent so long almost just kind of playing from their bedrooms. They were in the gaming house for a short amount of time, but live events is a whole different animal. And stopping for 20 minutes at a time at a live event, and most importantly, not being able to talk to each other for that long, can really get to your head mentally.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you're at home, you just be like, whatever, my internet's lagging, I'll play later, it doesn't matter. But you got to sit here, as you said, without talking. In fact, Determined lost a ban yesterday for talking during pauses, so not allowed at all here at this level. And I think that experience is going to play in here, but we do have the game started once again. We are going to get into it now. Coast versus the Walking Zed, still here in Game 1. Almost 3 minutes in here with this one. Looks like we may have missed a bit of the action, but no kills, no turrets yet. And Nidus and Main immediately in trouble here as WizFusion going to get in there as well, but just a bit of poking back and forth.
Right into the laning phase, and there's so much poke because they both want to hit level 2 first in that lane. And it's actually the AD carry and the support both up in the top lane this time.
Yeah, so we've swapped it around actually. We normally see the duo lanes down the bottom. This is what I like to call the Australian meta, Jat. It's like the standard meta, it's just upside down.
That's fantastic.
And looks
Right
at
there.
Zion Spider down the bottom, just farming where he can. Nasus, interestingly, must have gotten here early because he's pushing in Zion a little. That's not normally what we see.
Yeah, I think there was that whole engagement already, but that top lane / bottom lane duo is just going crazy.
It is. And
So crazy.
It's so crazy that we had to pause the game again.
I will give our crowd a big hand of applause. They are energetic.
They're lots of fun. Thank you guys so much for being here. It's good to have them. I mean, here in the new studio, it's been great to have the crowd. Players, the space is really good. Everything looks really shiny and pretty. I mean, I got here for the first time yesterday. It's great for me to be here as well.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
It's been very nice to have you on the desk to fill time with and cross fingers together.
Yes,
because we need this game to start.
It will start. It's okay. We'll eventually finish this series today, I predict.
Well, to talk about the game a little bit, since in only 3.5 minutes of playtime, there's actually been many interesting developments. So we obviously know the lanes are swapped. That's because sometimes it's a guessing game, but both of them may have wanted the 1v2. The other thing for that is Zion Spartan got to lane late because of the big fight that happened in the river. That whole time they were fighting there, Yuzuki was able to get a whole bunch of farm, and that's what he really needed on Nasus. If Nasus gets ahead of somebody in lane, it usually transitions straight into late game.
And it's actually, I like that you bring up Nasus because he's a champion that's kind of been seeing more and more play as a lot of tanky champions really enter the fray and start being played more. Because Mundo Shyvana, they push so hard, they're so tanky once they get farm, can be really frustrating to play against. But Nasus kind of has this thing where, you know what, if I'm getting pushed in, that's fine. I can just safely free farm.
Yeah, one more client restart here to try and fix this one up. And Yuzuki, that's why I wasn't too surprised if we think back 20 or so minutes when the picks and bans were happening, why the first kind of accidental ban from Coast was Nasus. Because I was expecting the Nasus to actually be banned. It's what everyone who played against the Walking Zed kind of feared or had to contain was his Nasus at some point in the game, because whether it's the team maneuvering to get him that lead in lane or his ability to just farm so well behind or in between his turrets, it's really powerful.
Yeah, and as Doublelift mentioned as well over at the analyst desk, it's really good against Jinx as well, and there's going to be a lot of pressure here for the bottom lane. WizFusion especially been really talked up by his team. He's definitely going to have to perform here, and if he's just getting Nasus all day, it's going to be really, really hard. If Yuzuki gets big, I predict quite a few problems for Coast.
And we can call it getting Nasus instead of getting with it. That's generally what happens when he gets going. I think there's actually enough slows on the rest of Coast's team to prevent getting Nasus at some point, at least to the full extent. They will be all right if we get this one going.
We will. Don't worry. I have faith, Joe.
Crowd, everyone's cautiously optimistic right now.
All right, so we are back in.
I believe that's an artifact of him leaving the game. It's just an old play because they had to rejoin when they were doing the client restarts, but he's moving around. We're in for now.
All right, things look good here. Going to start things off. Coast versus the Walking Zed. Once again here, still game one. Don't change that browser just yet. We almost had game one. It's slowly happening. There's a good chance they can play the game out.
The nice thing that's happening here from the Walking Zed is there was, even though there's a little bit of frustration from Bishu, Nidus and Bobby were smiling after that one because they have to stay positive in circumstances such as this one.
I mean, the analyst desk kind of alluded to it already, but how big of a factor is momentum actually leading into stuff like this? Because Doublelift said, well, if you lose game one, game two just feels so much worse. And that's really what a lot of players think about when they're like, want to get a good start in a long series as well. I mean, a best of 5 is long to play on any day. When there's this sort of action happening that really stops and stutters the first game especially, can be so hard to come back from that.
Yeah, we've got PC swap number 2 coming out here because Bobby Hankill's computer's getting swapped out. Hopefully that goes and fixes things because they're in a brawl in that top lane.
Yeah.
They were definitely just going for each other. It's good to have a good PC for that.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen so many 2v2 all-ins and very aggressive play just generally. So kind of interesting to see. Again, it's swapped around. I think...
Australian lane.
Yes, it is the Australian meta. But what does that tell you about intentions? Because one team in there probably wanted to try and fast push at one point, I assume against Shyvana.
This would be a good question to Doublelift either between the game or while we're doing the PC swap, because with those 2v2 lanes, Doublelift talks all the time about being purple side or being blue side. And normally the red side team 2v2 has like a disadvantage, I think, because of the ganking paths that the other team will be able to have on them if they go all aggressive. So at least for the Walking Zed, if they want to be aggressive, they would want to send their 2-man lane top lane, because then, well, no, let me think about that. Because then they could gank behind them. It's kind of bad from both situations.
All right, well, let's find out.
We're
going to swap the computers out and send it back to Shox and the guys at the analyst desk one more time.
Conversation, actually. So, Doublelift, what do you think of the lane situation right now?
Maybe. All right.
To be.
We're good.
Yeah,
Anyways,
there we go.
So, in response to that, Jat, that's a good question. It has to do not with so much where the jungler is ganking from, because generally junglers, while they gank through lane or river, it's really hard to get behind somebody unless they misplayed really bad. Most of it has to do with where the jungle lies. So right now, junglers generally aren't doing white on cooldown. I don't know why, but double gloams and wraiths are much more natural to just do. You do wraiths, and you go to doubles, and then you're naturally on the top side of the map, for purple side at least. And so that's why they sent their dual line top lane. It was probably the 2v1, but they got called on it. They're still at an advantage, honestly, because Thresh can lantern back after doubles is dead, and Elise just comes out of nowhere. And you flash flay the no flash Annie, and she's dead. And on the reverse, like let's say if they were bottom lane, Elise would have to do white and then come down, and that's just such an awkward path to take. Like generally junglers want to hover around their red area instead of their blue area, and that's why I think that side of the map has such a bigger advantage. You just see more ganks that way.
Freak, same opinion. As a jungler, maybe, how would you react to that? Where would you see the first opportunity?
Honestly, like, it's hard for me to tell, right? Because you look at sort of the lane matchups, and as you said, there's a pretty heavy crowd control lane down there, I guess up there in the duo lane. Really, like, Orianna Ziggs, not a lot of kill pressure there. The junglers, I mean, like, pretty much if you land a cocoon no matter what, I guess Elise is fine, and so you can kind of force the ganks there. Really, it's hard for me to tell, right? It's going to be, if you land a skill shot, then Elise gets to make plays. Olaf, otherwise, really hard to force things because, of course, Thresh, I believe, is missing his flash as well. Actually, Bobby Hankill's missing his flash on top of that. So I guess if you want to kill someone, heck, there's no flashes on TWZ's duo lane.
Well, I think at this point, we're just going to have to wait to see how the game progresses, but I'd like to take the opportunity to maybe look a bit tomorrow. First off, the Battle of the Atlantic, because it's still up in the air between EU and NA, who's able to take it. Cloud9 versus Fnatic, double lift. You know, Fnatic beat Cloud9 obviously at Worlds, and how do you think they're looking right now? How much better can Cloud9 look tomorrow?
Well, honestly, we had a much harder time with Alternate than we did with Fnatic. And to me, that means that Fnatic was in really poor shape for IM, and I don't know what shape they're in right now. Like, it doesn't mean that Fnatic is worse necessarily, just that they're in bad shape at that time. I don't know. I don't know how well they can adjust to their lanes. Their roster change? God, I can't get these words out. But they're always been a strong team. I mean, they're a top 4 finisher, and it's just ridiculous. Like, how you can finish top 4 from a region that was like kind of underrepresented, like underrated at Worlds. They're just a really good team overall, and I expect 2-1 to them. Like, C9's good, but I expect a repeat.
I don't know. For me, I think that's probably the likely result. I think that's probably where the crowd vote goes. I think it's where most of the analysts will probably consider it as well, is that Fnatic is the favorite here. But I don't know. I think at IEM, balls played below normal. And now any player can play above or below the potential on any given day. On that day, I think, when they were playing IEM, I think balls played worse than he normally does, and he's a much better player than he showed just a month ago. I think also with the new season, helping players learn new champion pools and kind of get new things to show themselves with, I think Cloud9's going to get remove another one of their weaknesses, which they showed at Worlds, which was High's champion pool getting attacked so heavily. That was one thing that held them down against Fnatic in the World Championship in that quarterfinal. So I think those two things in mind, they're going to see much better Cloud9 than we saw the last 2 times they fought a European team.
Yeah, that could very well be the case. But at the same time, there's so much pressure from the community for Cloud9 to win. I feel like everyone's already kind of shot them down to lose, almost. Like, they've put...
All right, I'm going to have to interrupt you right there, because it seems that we're back in the game, and of course we want to be back in the game.
That's good.
So let's go back over to our casters.
Thanks again, Shox. We are back here once again here. Hopefully everything has been fixed out nice and well here, and it's going to be Coast versus the Walking Zed in this opening matchup for the best of 5 here. Jat, we've done it a couple of times now, but I think we're finally back for the last time.
I hope you're right, Baser Jet.
Me too.
You have to assure me. I need to be reassured right now. No, the lane here has hit a level threshold. Daydreamin' and WizFusion. They've managed to push back Bobby and Kill and Nodus Remain, and they're gonna have supremacy in that lane until, like Double Lift says, the Elise comes in for the gank through double golems. But that's actually the opposite of where Kez is, because he cares about Yuzuki's Nasus.
He does. He's hanging out down the bottom. Zionspartan could be in trouble. Good flash arrow from the Cocoon, but Repel gonna follow in there as Venomous bites on top as well. Looks like he might be okay. Just a bit of poke as he runs, but good gank there.
I think a little more patience in that gank, and they actually could have converted the kill. Kez threw out his stun while the Wither was on, and it was able to be flashed, but what he should have done is walked up and started hitting him, then waited for the flash and stunned afterwards. But either way, they get the flash burn, and I'd call that a successful game.
Yeah, up towards the top. Looks like Jinx pushing in there as WizFusion and Daydream just trying to get some damage done. Shifter there in the mid. Big chunk of damage to Bishu, who's out of mana now as well. Has clearly been trying to defend pretty hardcore, and this is kind of what we expected early on in this matchup. Zig's just going to push Ori in time and time again.
Yeah, Bishu's actually done a really good job sticking with Shifter this early on. Shifter was obviously down his Ignite from very early on in that little bit of a skirmish. It doesn't matter that Bishu was low on mana, because it was just the right time for him to go back to base and buy that Chalice of Harmony.
Yep, so just going to keep pushing in now. Looks like Oriana's gone back and picked up the Chalice. As you pointed out, that's going to give Ziggs time to push into that mid lane turret now and try and get some damage done. And we saw it time and time again yesterday from Pobel to Ziggs. Ziggs really pressures turrets like no other AP mid can. Not only does he shove, but the short fuse for the turret damage is just incredible.
And Ziggs isn't normally the champion you think of as a roamer, but because Shifter can push this mid lane so fast, and because as a player he likes to roam so much, I think that's a real factor that the Walking Zed have to watch out for.
Yeah, I think that's actually something that's really, really nice about this, the way Coast have put together this team and the fact that they're playing Ziggs. Freak mentioned on the desk that Nintendo just likes to rotate in and put a lot of pressure down generally and really hammer home that mid turret. And they kind of get a head start here with picking this champion. And we're going to just trade farm back and forth.
I need to see how Nintendo recovers as well from the unfortunate events of his early game. His red buff was accidentally taken by Zion Spartan while his blue was being stolen away. He hasn't been able to really get any momentum swinging in the jungle on Olaf. There's a big hook though.
Good hook there to Daydreaming. Flay back in there as well. A stun out into Bobby Hank kill, and the Chompers go down, but first blood gonna go to Thresh, and now Daydreaming. No, never mind, does go down there. It's Wiz Fusion now going into Bobby Hank kill. They're gonna look for the trade. Flash forward there comes out for Jinx, and that will be the kill. She's now excited, and that should be enough to get away. The Zigzag coming up towards the top. Good defense there.
Hey, right there, we got to see it twice. That was pretty nice. But Coast, and especially Wiz Fusion, decided to all in the instant Daydreaming was hooked. That was the only way they come out of that with a 1-for-1.
Oh, Kez, a great flash there. Cocoon actually hits a minion, but Shifter using the flash there anyway. And that's going to be a nice gank. Once again, Kez really putting the pressure on in this early game. And I have to say, that top lane, an even bigger win for the Walking Dead, not just for First Blood, because with no gold item there for Annie, they were really wanting to all in and be aggressive.
Yeah, I do say that that hook from Natus Remain was very on point. They picked the Thresh with Annie available because they are confident in their ability to win that matchup. The unfortunate thing that happened, though, is Natus Remain got the kill on Thresh, where Wiz Fusion got the kill on Jinx. So now it's actually a BF sword versus just a Vamp Scepter for Bobby Hank kill. That's going to be advantage Coast.
Yeah, and all the pushing pressure from Jinx as well has given a nice healthy CS lead to Wiz Fusion in that lane. So things still looking good there despite the first blood going through. Stun there actually had the Choppers on as well, but a good lantern out there.
Even so, that's over half of Bobby Hankill's health, and the wave is pushed against him, which is why we're actually seeing immediate assistance coming from Kez on Elise.
Yep, going to rotate up there. Shifter in the mid, just going to hang out with Bishu, continue farming away. Bishu, as you mentioned, Jet, really keeping up in CS there, so nice early play on Orianna. That Chalice really doing nice things. Is down the bottom. There's going to be an awful lot of farm happening down the bottom, Jet. Probably not a whole lot else.
Definitely if we're tracking these lanes, the Walking Dead is winning the mid lane and the bottom lane, where the duo lane is going to Coast. But there's another
good hook lantern in there, so Daydreaming in a whole lot of trouble as he's forced to get away. But Nintendo, great counter gank here up towards the top as he's now maybe in trouble. The Undertow coming through, the damage moves in, and now Jinx pops that passive there as Bobby Hank kill. Now getting chased out as well. Nintendo needs to find the Undertow, but the Rocket's going to get it instead. The Zap just misses as Natus Remain flashes out, and they're going to look for the tower up here. That's Wiz Fusion diving in there. Natus Remain in trouble. The triple kill for Sig.
That was just Jinx going crazy. A good counter gank by Nintendo, but mainly just heady target selection by Wiz Fusion, and that's that Jinx passive. 1 kill snowballs into 3, and that lane just got destroyed.
And we don't see the Jinx resets very often, but we're going to get him again.
This was another hook where Coast decided to fight almost immediately. He lands a good stun into a double axe right there, and Wiz Fusion can just go right in afterwards.
Yeah, and that's Bobby Hank you can see getting chased down. There was really nowhere else for them to go. Great rocket there from Wiz Fusion.
That rocket that he shot afterwards, and then he actually hit level 6, skilled up the rocket, and decided to continue the dive. All those things are very smart play, and it justifies the pickup of Wiz Fusion as their new AD carry.
Man fight down the bottom there. Zion Spartan getting low, trying to bait in Yazuki. Nintendo's rotated down, but that's Nasus going to pop the ultimate. Now Elise is in here as well. Shyvana got to be very, very careful. Now Nintendo kind of caught in the wrong place. Pops Ragnarok to get out of the way, and he is going to be safe. Cocoon will hit, but does not disable, of course.
Yeah, because he's Olaf.
He is Olaf. I mean, we've seen more Olaf kind of this weekend at this point. We're only halfway through.
Yep.
That we've
He's
seen
really big
all.
in the North American promotion tournament so far. And speaking of being really big, like Yuzuki's Nasus is going to become a monster very soon. He's already got 132 bonus damage on his Siphoning Strike only 10 minutes in, and it's only going to get worse because Zion Spartan isn't going to reach a point here where he can really start pushing Yuzuki back in the lane.
I have to give massive amount of credit to Nintendo though. His counter ganking in the top lane really turned okay situation into an incredible situation for his team. And we were wondering, you know, Olaf's not really a ganker. Nintendo doesn't gank all that much. But that was right place, right time if there ever was one. And when you're jungling, it's all about decisions.
Yeah, and once Kez used all of his spells to re-engage, it was just the chase down that he managed to get 3 easy assists there by landing a couple axes, and then like it couldn't have went better for them. Wiz Fusion got all 4 of those kills, and the first kill gave him the red buff, which was another thing that enabled all those things. If Nintendo had wanted the way back in this game after the bad early game accidental steal by Zion Spartan on red, that'll be it.
And you can see up in the top lane when we were just there, there's just so much bullying happening here. Bobby Hank kills falling swiftly behind in CS. There's even a pink ward in that piece of brush, just a spot for any ganks in. Really just kept complete control of vision of that area.
Yeah, and the lane is consistently pushed back here too. It's just creating more aggression opportunities for Coast. It's strange that WizFusion isn't pushing himself because he could. It's because they're actually respecting the Elise gank a hell of a lot, and it's working for them.
And Kez actually popped up there very briefly trying to go for that gank, but as you pointed out, Coast just really freezing their lane in a great spot there and denying any of their potential gank round. And that's really smart play. When you're ahead, the one thing you don't want to do is trade off or fall behind again. You want to keep your lead. And when you're ahead, keep getting more ahead is the classic phrase, and they're really doing it up there. And Intended, he's popping up again.
And we'll see if he can get this one, and there is no flashes on either Walking Zed guy. So if Daydreamer lands a stun, this is a kill.
The Zap actually missing there, but Nidus and Main could be in a whole lot of trouble trying to get through there, but the Tibbers will fall down, and now there's absolutely nowhere for Thresh to run. He is going to go down as Intended picks up the kill this time.
All over the place right now for Coast. They're getting advantages. Actually, during that last replay of the triple kill, Shifter soloed Bishu in the mid lane. If we're wondering how he got that one kill on Ziggs, now they're pushing this turret.
And that turret looks like it's probably going to go down here. Kez moves into defense here. Bobby Hankill trying to clear out what he can. Pops the culling there, actually, just to try and get them off the top. But you can see that Jinx passive again. Doesn't just work on champion kills or assists. Works on turrets as well. And very intelligently, the Walking Zed back off.
There is a full 2,000 gold advantage right now for WizFusion over Bobby and Kill, and that is a whole team effort. It's been Daydreaming, getting the stuns when he gets hooked and deciding to go all in with the rest of his team, and the good ganks by Nintendo. This is all going to be on Yuzuki, really, to try and come back.
Yeah, I mean, Doublelift mentioned it, the NASA something that's quite good against his Jinx here, and WizFusion, his team were talking him up in that video saying, this guy's really good, he's done so much for our team, and he better carry this game at this point. He's been given all the tools and all the gold to do so. As Bobby Hankill up in the top, he's just trying to farm as much as he can.
And with his turret down, he can't freeze that for long. Otherwise, it's going to end up impacting the rest of his team. We can see now with WizFusion and Daydreaming down here, they're going to either pressure the Dragon or just do a straight-up turret push because they can. There's only 4 real people on the map for the Walking Zed, as long as Bobby and Kill is up in that top lane trying to farm.
Yep, pink ward up here for Daydreaming, so could be checking out this Dragon. Does throw down the ward there, and we'll be able to clear that out. And Bobby Hankill, as you mentioned, all the way up in the top. He's probably not going to get down here in time, and Coast are going to continue to solidify their pretty hefty gold lead early on in this one and pick up the very first Dragon.
And this is a good time to take the Dragon as well. You can see 163 gold going to everyone there. That's more what the Dragon was worth before the preseason here. I'm seeing a lot of teams really value the early Dragon. I don't think it's worth it early on in the game because they devote so much health and resources and lane presence to get that first Dragon before it's rewarding. But now, since Dragon's gold scales with the average level in the game, seeing that everyone's around level 10 or so, it's actually giving a hefty sum of gold at this point, and that's the best time, I feel like, for Coast to devote resources to get it.
Yep, Nintendo was down the bottom there. He's actually on top of a ward, unfortunately for him, but will do the thing and just rotate him, try and get some pressure down. But good movement there from the Walking Zed to make sure they can defend that turret and get everything moving on mid lane. Be interesting to see how Ziggs is doing in terms of turret pressure, and of course, with Bishu already going down 1v1, that's going to be that's unfortunate, as we see. Pretty good job here from Shifter. About a third of its health has gone down.
Yeah, he's been holding the turret fairly well. He's just got to worry about not dying, and there is more pressure being put on by Coast. This is the mid game they're normally so great at. They're taking control of some of this jungle and trying to get a steal. Not quite fast enough.
Good attempt there by Shifter, but couldn't quite get it done. No smite, no, actually maybe was available for Nintendo there, but
he just couldn't see it. Yeah, because they pulled the buff into the brush there and were able to spike it down before the Ziggs bomb got there first.
Smart stuff. And Jack, I want to draw attention here to the 80 carry item builds right now between these two teams. We're actually talking a little bit about it before the game. I like Trinity Force a lot, but I think in this situation especially, it just feels so awkward when the enemy has a Bloodthirster.
Oh, look out on this dive. There's that Bloodthirster.
Nidus going in. There's WizFusion going in again. The tower does get out. A perfect time to go in here under Jinx. The zap just a little short there as Undertow's going to look for it, but can't quite clean the kill.
Yeah. I'll talk about the item build now. The Lucian item build in particular. I feel like you want to get the Bloodthirster and the Trinity Force in whatever order you can. And the BF Sword would be great for immediate power. He just never had the ability to have a full 1,550 gold just to buy a BF Sword. He's been dying so much or getting pushed out of lane so frequently. He's just trying to get as much power as he can possibly have for them now.
Yeah, Kez just missing a cocoon there as well. Bishu moving in, but nice flame chompers being chucked down there by Jinx to kind of deny any of that, and Shifter left alone here. This is a lot of what we saw yesterday with Pobel to Ziggs, is that if you're left long enough with the tower, you're shoving in the lane every single wave, especially when you have blue, you'll eventually wear it down if people start roaming.
Those Ziggs auto attacks just finish off turrets and push them way faster than you'd expect an A3 champion to be able to do. It's like a demolitionist right there.
Yeah, it's actually a bit of a man fight happening here in the top, but looks like nothing will really come of it. And I want to draw your attention to the demolitionist aspect, Jack, because in Australia, actually, there's a couple of well-known Ziggs players. You might remember Team Immunity from the Wildcard tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both Heaven's Curse and Rady, their AD carry, actually play a ton of Ziggs in solo queue. A shift to him, maybe going to get caught up, but daydreaming around the side as well. Nidus be in a whole lot of trouble now as he's trying to flame it. Intended in there as well. The Undertow's going to hit him straight in the face, and that kill is going to go over to the Ziggs.
Even if that hook landed, I feel like he would have died for that one. Not always a good idea to try to hook a Ziggs who's that beefy and farmed. Athene's Unholy Grail, and now it's just a roaming mob spot for Coast.
This would be a big dive, but Wiz Fusion unfortunately hits a minion there with his zap, so they'll back away for now. The reason I mentioned those Australian players, though, they are famous for rushing Lich Bane on Ziggs.
Oh, and just trying to kill the turrets as quickly as possible. Shifter's a player who does like building Lich Bane, but I see him complete it a little bit later on Ziggs right there, because they clearly have no troubles killing turrets here.
No, I mean, oh, that's pretty good. There is a good stun going to move him for Daydreaming. Great repel to landed in there as well. Zion trying to push him back. That was a really smart play.
If Zion could have gotten him as he was going for Lantern, and he hooks in, I don't know why.
That's unfortunate for Nidus, but goes in a little too deep there. The team not ready to protect him, and he's very, very dead.
Double Lift and Freak were talking a little bit about tilting in these best of threes, and when you're not playing on this stage very frequently, sometimes that can get into you. And Nidus Remain had actually been playing very well in the laning phase, but things weren't going his way, and going in on that Thresh hook was definitely a tilt move. That is not a mistake he would make in the online group stage, but he just made it there.
And Coast going to continue to push here. The teleport is going to come in, but a good chomp is that Yazuki caught up by that, slowed up by the zap as well. Nintendo gets caught, but he's going to pop Ragnarok and walk right on out.
Being able to get the inhibitor turret down this early in the game is huge for Coast as a team. Surprisingly, Shifter has just been hanging out in mid lane with Bishu this entire time, but I feel like the mid lane turret set is next up for Coast.
Nintendo caught up there, cocooned by Kaz. No Ragnarok to save him there, but he'll be okay for that one. And you're right, it's funny, we spent a lot of time in our pregame kind of talking up this mid lane matchup, saying Bishu's such a strong force on GGLA and here on this team, and we're expecting big plays here from Shifter. He's been hanging, farming.
Yeah.
It's almost like top lane.
It's been Wiz Fusion. That's
it really has
been the story here in this game. Him and Daydreamin', there's synergy together, because the play that happened at the very start of the game that just got the 1-for-1 trade, not even the big one, when Daydreamin' got hooked and was essentially dead, Wiz Fusion's trust and ability to just go all in on that hook is what saved them in that situation. You don't get that synergy unless you absolutely trust your lane partner. That didn't happen with Mashme and Daydreamin' last split, and that definitely doesn't happen with people in solo queue. So that's telling me Wiz Fusion and Daydreamin' have a lot of synergy so early on in their competitive lives.
Yeah, credit to Nintendo as well, who really just wanted to go straight in for that 3v3, confident there that they could get that counter gank happening. We talked a lot about yesterday again, where teams look confident when they're all going in together and being decisive as a unit. That's something you don't get unless you have a lot of practice together. And Coast, they are very experienced here, especially compared to TWZ.
And it was one of the defining factors in Evil Genius's victory yesterday as well, how well they were sticking together as a team. Obviously after they were able to grant leads, which is kind of a pretty key part of it, but just the way they played with vision in the jungle, sweeping out all the wards, camping the right rushes, and almost imitating Fnatic. Coast, while not imitating Fnatic, is almost doing a bit of almost a Cloud9 impersonation, because they're just winning everywhere, taking all the objectives, and doing whatever they want.
I mean, again, calling back to Nintendo and how he seems to like to pressure a whole bunch of lanes. There's been nothing but tower pressure here from Coast, and that may be a product of Jinx specifically, or Nintendo's Olaf, who has good wave clear here. I mean, even the item builds here.
It's absurd. It's an absurd differential, 8,200 gold to 5,300 gold. When you look at those 80 carries, 5 turrets to 0 right now. This is really a strong showing so far game 1 for Coast.
Oh, look at this, just poking him off the turret, trying to do as much damage as they can. Even the ultimate from Jinx coming in. I mean, every now and then we see Gragas ultimates just to push people off the turret so you can siege them. Very reminiscent of that style of play there.
Yeah, he didn't even have blue buff when he threw that one out. They're just wanting to get this turret before their next back. You can see they're sitting on a bit of gold. 700 at least on every member, so about 3,500 to 4,000 unspent gold on their team right now. Once they get this turret, they might decide to go back, but they got it because they harassed the Walking Zed down so low.
And there's also nothing the Walking Zed can really do in terms of initiating. They just don't want to fight Coast here, and if they even forced to fight under the turret, they don't feel confident enough to win it because they're just so far behind.
I would almost start thinking of the next game if you're walking.
I think so too, and I guess with that in mind, Jat, Coast almost 10,000 gold ahead. You mentioned the top lane gank with Jinx getting a triple kill there. I mean, what else really went wrong here for the Walking Zed?
So even though Bishu played well in the mid lane, it wasn't ideal. He gave up a solo kill, and that's never that strong. I think what went well for Walking Zed was Yuzuki's play 1v1 in the lane. That's about it, as far as I can tell so far for the Walking Zed.
So Coasty just really opening up strong, having a strong presence in all their lanes, and Nintendo with a good bit of play there as well. Getting them to a very, very strong lead here. It's not quite 10,000 gold yet, but we're pretty close here. And for me, this looks almost like an old Season 3 game when you look at the scoreboard. Not that many kills, given all the aggression.
And a lot of turrets.
A ton of turrets here. 6-0 here for Coast. I mean, they tried to change the password, but Coast here really taking that philosophy still.
Absolutely here. Shifter's going to be able to get another blue buff. They're really just trying to execute out for this one. They've also placed a ton of pink wards so far in this game. There's still a few lingering in the Dragon River, and now a fresh one at Baron. Plus, they've all went sweeper, as you just pointed out to me on the screen there, so I get to see it. But 4 of them just to take complete control of this Walking Zed jungle. I see them just sweeping the jungle they're in right now so that even the approach to Baron is impossible for the Walking Zed to track, and then they could control it, or they're just realizing they're 10,000 gold ahead. And why not just brute force the inhibitor down?
And one of the things I like about kind of the preseason, as we do see Coast move in here, could be starting one of the last fights potentially of this game here. I mean, the Walking Zed, they're going to try and defend this inhibitor, but it almost feels awful here with Zig still poking you in. There's just so much damage, so much, just everything
so
here.
Much stuff. Everyone
so
is items ahead. There's a whole bunch of items on Wiz Fusion. There's just now a Trinity Force on Bobby Handkill. For a while, it was just a Phage and a Sheen to a Bloodthirster and a Static Ship. It's not fair if they fight right now. Even if they caught Wiz Fusion and bursted him down 100-0, I still think Coast comes out on top.
Yuzuki kind of looking around the side here, and you can see Elise very far forward there. Annie as well. Flash Tip is at the ready. Actually popping the Talisman there, just wanted to get out safely. Smart play there from Coast. Very safe here. We saw Evil Geniuses a lot yesterday when they were ahead, and they got quite ahead in their series. They played very, very carefully to close out their games.
And why would you not play carefully when so much is on the line for Team Coast? They know what it's been like. They were near the bottom of the LCS all throughout the spring until they made an amazing run in the playoffs, and then they didn't quite make it into the playoffs in the summer split, which is why they were the 7th LCS seed. Smart Baron right here for them. They had wards and swept the jungle before they made it there, and they just secure that Baron.
Yeah, very smart, very safe Baron coming out there from Coast. And I alluded to earlier, trinkets. One of the things I like about what's happening with trinkets in the preseason is that obviously as teams are learning about how this works, but it seems like the more ahead you are, the more red trinkets you want. And we saw that yesterday from EG, getting 3 early red trinkets when they had a lead. 4 is a massive amount here from Coast, but they just know they need to get vision. They have so much space on this map.
And I think because they have such a large lead, they don't really care about seeing where the Walking Zed is. They just want to make sure that they don't get seen. They're kind of just trying to move around in the shadows. If anything, if we're thinking long-term here, I'm wondering maybe the blue trinket might get a little bit of play for teams that are really far behind to not face check brushes that have been swept away when you're behind in the lane.
I hope the blue trinket sees some love, Chad. I'm a big fan of the blue trinket here, but Coast are going to push down yet another turret here and make it 7-0 on that count here, and just a massively one-sided game, I think, at this point. Coast came out swinging, and the Walking Zed. I mean, I felt like with the momentum kind of stuff. Oh no,
here's
Shifter.
the fight.
Oriana roll, that's good there, but still the damage moves in. Nidus the main dead very quickly there is Shifter, now getting chased out as well, but he's okay for now as Zion trying to peel off as Bobby Handkill going to go down. Wiz Fusion killing everybody there with a double kill. Now going to take on Yuzuki, takes a big chunk out, but Nintendo's going to peel off for him, and that's going to be the triple once again.
And Shifter didn't even go down in that one. A 25-minute ace followed by the surrender.
And a huge game there for Coast. They were the challenger team here leading into this promotion series, and they're going to show it here. Absolutely massive game for them.
That was incredibly fast, incredibly decisive, and incredibly impressive so far by Coast. 13 kills to 1. The only death was in getting a kill early on in the game in the 2v2 lane between Wiz Fusion and Daydreamin'. And the Walking Zed has a lot of recovery to do, because when a game goes that wrong for you pastry time, you basically have to throw everything out again. You can't even take lessons from it.
So, Jad, I have to ask you, how much of that do you think was what happened in the early stages with a couple of technical difficulties and things not starting off maybe the way that they wanted to here? I mean, we talk about experience. Do you think they were a little tilted even maybe?
That could definitely be an impact. Like, sitting through about 30 minutes of technical difficulties as they had to do when they know that the biggest game of their lives is up. That's the thing. Coast, even though they're requalifying, they've been in a situation of having to qualify or having to kind of play for their spot in the LCS multiple times, and they would definitely be more used to sitting through that. If anything, it's the negative implication for the Walking Dead not being used to it, and credit to Coast for knowing what it's like and being able to just stay on it, because as soon as that pause ended, it wasn't many minutes later they got those triple kills.
Do you think that, given that we do have to throw everything out again now, that there's going to be changes made? I mean, do you see anything in that game and think maybe I want to ban that, want to change my picks around a little, or do you think they just say, all right, we're going to consider it an entire, almost first game again in the series and just go again?
It's so hard when everything loses, because you're like, well, because in the EG series, it was like Pobelter doing amazing on Ziggs, and we're saying, well, they should ban out the Ziggs. They didn't. They went kind of 0-3. Now,
yeah,
like,
I mean,
Wiz Fusion, I feel like you could do that on a lot of AD carries. There was a Sivir ban in that game. They picked Lucian against it, which is considered heads up or better than Lucian in lane, and it didn't matter for them. If anything, I would just try and take some of Coast champions away from them. You can't really necessarily ban all those out, and just try and change up Coast as much as possible while organically changing your own team comp, because you're picking different champions by picking theirs.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the number one thing is just stay calm. You know, it's a long series. You've got plenty of time to go back in here, collect yourself, breathe deeply, and just try again here. Don't get rattled by what's happening. From this point on, do you think the games are probably going to go a lot more smoother on the technical side?
Yeah,
so
I mean, we made it through the whole 25 minutes there afterwards without technical difficulty, so got all my fingers crossed.
All of them again. So we've got to take a quick break, but when we return, Walking Dead and Team Coast head back to the Rift for Game 2 in their promotion tournament showdown. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.